Hello and welcome back to Vox Terra. Today we want to continue with that question that Israeli journalist, pro-peace activist who gets so little attention in the mainstream media, Amira Haas asked, how can the world just stand by and witness Israel's slaughter in Gaza? Well, let's start from taking a page from Noam Chomsky and his critique of the media, how it's owned by these large corporate business interests or influenced by them, the defense industry, and I'm adding in fossil fuel petrochemicals, and how certain voices are emphasized, others de-emphasized. Tragedies and victims from nations that are on our client list, as he called them, are humanized. Tragedies and deaths in countries, or victims in countries that are on what, I forgot how he described it, but let's say our hit list, are de-emphasized, dehumanized, or not humanized, simply numbers. So let's just humanize Gaza a bit again by taking a look at this clip from a dad who lost his daughter.
I don't want to let her go. This is my daughter. I want as much time with her as I have before we bury her.
A dad who is scrabbling through the rubble to find food for his family.
I do not know how we will provide food for our children. I am searching here under the rubble for even the remains of lentils and rice, even a little for my children.
A Palestinian diplomat, or so she's described on Democracy Now! Interview, is also a grandmother.
I would like you to see our children as human beings. The women killed, people under the rubble who die under the rubble because we don't have the machines to get them out. Because also the first responders have been killed. Because ambulances have been destroyed. Because there are no roads to get to them. And because people are digging them out with their hands and they can hear them and they can get to them. Because a grandmother, I am one, was embracing the body of her daughter and her grandchildren and saying, please come to me in my dreams because I can't live without you. This is what you're doing, Mr. Biden. This is what the West is doing.
And we'll come back to her again for her political analysis underemphasized. Well, not just de-emphasis, underemphasis, but here Secretary of State of the United States of America, Anthony Blinken, was quoted in The Guardian, and Axios, I believe, is asking Qatar to ask Al Jazeera to, hey guys, can you tone down your coverage of Gaza? National Public Radio, who first of all just say, yeah, they've got some really good journalism and it's more credible than a lot of sources, but in this case they follow the dominant paradigm, in my opinion, had a piece where the reporter was lamenting social media and how they're showing all these grisly images coming out of Gaza. And then she compared that to ISIS videos of them beheading people.
Graphic videos and images of the Israel-Hamas war are flooding social media. Years ago, the company set guardrails to deal with violent content. NPR's tech correspondent Dara Kerr looks at why some limits haven't kept up.
About 10 years ago, a series of horrific videos went viral online. They showed Islamic State militants beheading their captives.
The terrorist group ISIS today released
another gruesome video showing the horrific killing and its gruesome aftermath.
The videos stirred intense debate on how social media companies should handle such graphic content. Many people said keeping them online gave ISIS publicity.
Basically, look the other way as there's now 9,000 dead Palestinians in Gaza, sewage flowing in the streets, and according to Oxfam International, Israel is using food or starvation as a weapon of war. And that point seems to be the exact same point that journalist Yumna al-Sayed, Al Jazeera reporter reporting from Gaza, seems to be making.
Is Al Jazeera saying that there's no water and there's no electricity in Gaza and there is? Is it saying that there are no networks in the mobile phones and there are? Why are we getting these orders?
John Kirby, White House spokesman, said that when asked about civilian deaths, well, war is war. These kind of things are going to happen. This is what war looks like.
This is war. It is combat. It is bloody. It is ugly, and it's going to be messy. And innocent civilians are going to be hurt going forward.
Just flip this stuff around in your head a bit. Well, would John Kirby get up there and say if Russia or China did something similar, would they say this is what war looks like and China's got to defend its interests or Russia's got to defend its interests? But you know what? It can look even uglier than just saying, hey, can you tone down the coverage? This is a war. We got to do. Journalists in Gaza have been getting killed by airstrikes.
On Wednesday, an Israeli strike killed the wife, son, daughter, and grandson of one of the most prominent journalists in Gaza, Wael Dahdouh, Al Jazeera's Arabic Gaza bureau chief, who's been described as the voice of Gaza.
Yumna al-Sayed, who I heard interviewed on October 26, she said that her bureau chief went to the south in Gaza, just like Israel said to do, but they still bombed there anyway.
In these same areas that people were asked to evacuate, hundreds of families who had evacuated from the north and from Gaza City were killed in those bombings. I just want to ask one question. Why did they ask us to go to the south?
And before we answer her question of why would they tell us to go south, in that interview, she also talked about 2021. Apparently there, Israel bombed the Associated Press office, which also housed Al Jazeera.
All media offices in the Gaza Strip in the 2021 were completely destroyed. All buildings hosting any media office, including Al Jazeera's and the AP's, were leveled to the ground.
And she cited the killing of Palestinian American journalist by Israel. Now, here too, we could add in the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, an American, also an American citizen who I believe was of Saudi Arabian descent, killed by the Saudi government. The Saudi government's another one of those countries where we're told, well, they do some bad stuff, but they're on our team. You should question that. Couldn't all these teams just be flipped around? Doesn't this all feel a bit arbitrary to you? What business interests are really at stake here? What's really going on? Why go along with this? Well, coming back to that, why did they tell us to go south and then bomb the south? Well, here that Palestinian grandma said something very similar to what I told you Ofer Kassif, Israeli Knesset member, also a communist, we should note, said as well that Israel, the fascists within Israel, as he called them, wanted to take advantage of this Hamas attack to enact their plan for what he's calling ethnic cleansing, if I remember his interview correctly.
They had hoped at the beginning that with carpet bombing and with killing as many people as possible in the north and sending them south, then bombing them on the way and bombing them when they get to the south, that they had hoped they would carry out ethnic cleansing in the north, and they would clear the way either for a ground invasion where there are no people or for a reoccupation of the north. At first, they hoped that all Palestinians can be expelled and kicked out and can go to Egypt or Jordan or whatever.
And again, I really want to emphasize those underemphasized voices within the Jewish community who are against all of this. Well, further evidence of this ethnic cleansing pattern, there was an NBC article on November 2nd, I believe, talking about an Israeli memo, an internal memo discussing proposing that the Palestinians get relocated to Egypt out of Gaza. And if you're looking at this from a Palestinian point of view, are warships going there to what exactly support Israel, whatever exactly that means, because not all Israelis agree with this, it could look to them like they're saying, hey, let them kill as many of you guys as you want, because we don't, and if don't Iran or Hezbollah dare get involved in this. So from our media standpoint, hey, that's a good thing, they shouldn't get involved. But from their standpoint, this is the cavalry coming to help them out. And there's so much what I call intrigue ignored by our media that would also give us Americans pause before we know who to start pounding our fists at, if we should be pounding our fist at anybody. Amy Goodman on Democracy Now! Pointed out a very underreported history of Israel supporting some of the Islamicist elements within Palestine to counterweight the PLO, or the secular organizations that were challenging Israel.
I wanted to ask you if you could talk about Israel's involvement in Hamas gaining power. In 2009, Avner Cohen, a former Israeli religious affairs official who worked in Gaza for over 20 years, told the Wall Street Journal, quote, "Hamas, to my great regret, is Israel's creation." Another former Israeli official, Brigadier General Yitzhak Segev, said he was given a budget to help finance Islamist movements in Gaza to counter Yasser Arafat and his Fatah movement. Another former Israeli military official, David Chacham, said, quote, When I look back at the chain of events, I think we made a mistake. But at the time, nobody thought about the possible results.
Well, similarly, we can look at when I was much younger and Ronald Reagan supported Islamicists in Afghanistan called the Mujahideen to counter or thwart or defeat the Soviet Union. Now, back to Hamas, I also want to point out that Palestinian grandma pointed out that by always calling Hamas a terrorist organization, in her opinion, she claims that's a way to demonize or vilify or dehumanize the Palestinian population, because she pointed out that Hamas is actually 30% of people in Gaza, and they were elected, and they have more than just a military wing which carried out the attack on Israel. They also have a political wing, they also have a charitable wing, and perform all sorts of functions within Gaza.
I'm not a Hamas supporter, and I've never been, and I'm not a member. But they are 30% at least of the population. They ran for elections. They were part of the Legislative Council. They have a military wing, yes, and they have a political wing, yes, and they have social services and institutions and women's organizations and children's organizations, and they provide services in Gaza and elsewhere. So why do you insist on just labeling Hamas as a terrorist organization and not understanding the larger context? You cannot kill Hamas. You want to kill 30% of the people?
And she said it's not fair to compare them to ISIS. Well, interestingly, you could argue it isn't fair to compare ISIS to ISIS. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, the formation of ISIS, what our media narrative left out is, hey, we, in quotes here, toppled the Iraqi government, disbanded the entire military, put the Sunni population then at a disadvantage, and that then became their organizing tool, ISIS. Well, what's the lesson for us Americans? Well, I think a lesson here is to realize that this claim of moral high ground it can be a manipulative tool. And what industries really benefit from all these wars? Well, it seems like the fossil fuel petrochemical industry and the defense industry always come out on top. And why is it that their roles in our government are so underemphasized and underexplored? Why is it those millions in campaign donations from both of them going to our politicians are ignored by our media? So in my opinion, why the world's looking the other way as we pump this atmosphere full of carbon and methane is a similar question with a similar answer to why the world is looking the other way at what Israel is now doing in Gaza, or much of the world is. It's a similar related question. And we don't want to blame an ethnic group or a type of people. What we want to do is just look at how this system is structured and how we're trapped in the system and how so few of our public seem to have much of an interest in questioning it and changing it. And that they want to keep defending either the war or keep defending the fossil fuel industry. That, my friends, is a mistake for the person defending those industries, defending the status quo, and for all of us. Well, hey, I hope you found some useful bits in this show and this monologue and this whole thing here. And if so, please make sure you subscribe, you click that notification bell so you know I'm putting up a new video. You're liking, you're commenting, constructive criticism is welcome. Thanks for donating at Patreon. And as always, until next time, partner, peace be with you.